Welcome to Living a Life by Design. It's the journey back to you and living 365 days of purpose with your host, Esther Graham. Did you know your accountability and possibility is by design? God designed a phenomenal life for you, gave you the gift of choice. Esther helps empower you to discover and pursue the purpose that is already in you. Are you ready to look at yourself and see your future? Then get back to what is really important in life and get in alignment with your true self. Stay tuned to Living a Life by Design. Journey back to you and start living 365 days of purpose with your host, Esther Graham. It all starts now.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Life by Design podcast. I am so excited. Listen, we are living 365 days of purpose. And the only way that we can do that is make sure that our life is in alignment by what we have been designed and created to be and to do. My very special guest today is Dr. Delicia Haynes. She is a friend, a good friend, and just someone that I admire in the medical community. We've built a wonderful relationship over the past few years, and so I'm super excited to introduce you to everyone as we discuss, bringing light to our mental health, bringing light when we're in a very dark space. And Dr. D, as I fondly call her, has really a lot to say about that. She's got several things that she does. One of the things that she does do is a coach, and she has a book or a coaching program called Safe Space, White
White
Coat
coat safe space. Yeah.
White Coat Safe Space, which is absolutely phenomenal. Listen, the book that she's written, my daughter has read. My daughter, as y'all, many of you know, she's in her third year of residency, and Dr. D has just been a blessing to her in making sure that she's functioning and that her mental wellness is on point. So, everyone, I just want to introduce you to my very good friend, Dr. Delicia Haynes. Please reintroduce yourself and let's talk.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to be here because you just from the moment I met you, you had my heart. And you just and made me part of the family. And so many of us are just walking around feeling alone. So it's so great when you find those kindred spirits. My name is Dr. Delicia Haynes. As Esther said, I'm board certified in family medicine, obesity medicine. I'm the founder and CEO of Family First Health Center. I'm an author times two. My first book is on really on mental health amongst the medical professions, and it's called The Dawn. And then my second was a planner that I created, an inspirational planner to really help put all the personal development in together. And I really, in my day to day, I'm a family doctor, so I'm taking care of people of all walks in life, just really helping provide that personalized healthcare with compassion and respect, helping them to reach their next level in terms of their health goals.
Yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. So as you guys can see that she does wonderful things. You guys, if you know me, you know I keyed into the obesity. Because listen, I mean, that's all a part of living well, when we feel good about who we are and in our bodies. And so, what I want to talk about today, Dr. D, is really, if you don't mind sharing just a little bit of your story that put you on the path to White Coat Safe Space and just really bringing light into a very dark space. How can we do that? What brought you there, and the importance of it?
Absolutely. And it was something that, for a long time I didn't feel comfortable talking about because I didn't want to become known as like the depressed doctor.
Yeah.
While I was building a business and gaining a reputation. And what shifted that for me was I lost my best friend to suicide and recognized that we'd never had a conversation about my history in that respect. We were always talking about kind of our peaks and not of our valleys. It was always in a win-win-win. My first episode of major depression happened actually when I was in high school. And I didn't know what depression was. I'd moved from Maryland to Kentucky, which is a huge culture shock. And I came in, and because of my GPA, I messed up the top 10 seniors. So there was some animosity amongst the students there as far as like, are her grades real and all of that. Um, I didn't have any friends. I just had been kind of ripped away from, what I knew. I had my family, which is fantastic, but there's just a lot of upheaval. And I started to have, just not being interested in things that I usually was interested in. I've always been a good eater. My appetite was nothing. I've always cared about hygiene. I went days without having a shower. I was snappy to my mom, and my parents put the fear of God in me at a young age. So they knew something was wrong. And one of my teachers had us write, and I started writing things like, it'd be better off if I wasn't here.
Mm,
And she intervened. So I really credited a lot of me still being here to Mrs. Bowker, my ninth grade English teacher. So for all the teachers out there, thank you for what you do. Um, she intervened. She actually called my dad, had him come in. We had a meeting, and it was the beginning of me getting help. I then went to undergrad at the University of Louisville, where I was a Division I athlete. So my dad is an Olympian. I thought I was going to go to the Olympics. I had no idea that you just don't go there. It's not the natural next step. I did really well mental health wise while I was in college. I pledged my sorority. I was active with my track and field team. I was very physically active. And then I went to medical school, and I was sitting on my butt for 8 hours studying per day. I wasn't around any of my friends really anymore. The class that I came in with was very competitive. So some people would actually send out study sheets that were wrong on purpose so that you could, get the incorrect answer.
wow.
So that was kind of the environment was like sharks. And I had my second episode of major depression, and my boyfriend broke up with me, which is also was not good. Um, and I had my second episode of major depression, and at first I didn't give myself permission to take time off. My dad was like, "You need to take a break," and I was like, "This is medical school. We don't do breaks." My pastor told me I needed to take a sabbatical, and I was like, "This is medical school. We don't do sabbaticals." And finally, my dean of students, I missed a test. I overslept a test, and I had to get permission to take that test again. And he made me come to his office. And I just remember walking there with my head down, just like, everything's coming crashing down. All of my hopes and everything are about to end. Because he was very stern in his insistence of me coming in. And he actually recommended I take a break while I was still in good academic standing, and it would be seen as a personal leave of absence, and that no one would have to know really what it was for. And when
Wow.
he said that I'd take a break, I finally gave myself permission to take a break. I took a break, and then while I was on break, we lost 5 members of my family, from my granddad to my 3-month-old niece. Um, and when I came back, everybody said she had 5 deaths in her family, and then she got depressed.
Mm,
And I just kind of let people go with that. Um, but that was really where it all, came from. I did a lot of research on depression and suicide among physicians, but until my friend died, I really didn't start talking about it.
right, right. So now that you're talking about it, and I think this is a really important subject, especially post-pandemic. Not that it was not prior to the pandemic, but I think especially after that, there's so many of us that have mental wellness issues,
Mhm.
right? And many times we don't even realize it. We're as you said, no, you don't have time to go on a sabbatical. You don't have time to take a break. You have to keep moving. And I think that's where many of us are right now. And so as we in just a couple minutes prepare to go on a brief break, I want you to come back and talk to us about um, when you begin to recognize it, what is it that you have to begin to do? I'll tell you why. Because as you know, especially in the African American community, or if you're Black overall, not necessarily African American, there's a stigma.
Mhm.
There's a stigma with saying I am not feeling well mentally, emotionally. My mental wellness is off. I have to keep going. And not that it's not in any of the other communities, because clearly it is. But it just seems like if when you're looking at research that is very high in our community, simply because we're taught that's just not what we do. That's just not what we do. And so, as we prepare to go on a break, everyone, we're going to come back. I'm going to ask Dr. D to speak to that just a bit. And really, so we can all, no matter what our culture and our background is, can feel okay. I'm not doing well mentally. And so, I need to go get some help. And so, how do I begin to just make those decisions? And I know I'm piling a lot of things in there and recognizing, yo, wait a minute, I need a break. I have to walk away from this and being okay with that. So, we'll go on a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Life by Design podcast, living 365 days of purpose with my very special guest, Dr. Delicia Haynes. We are going to continue our conversation on shedding light when you're in a very dark space. And listen, we're just having a conversation. I'm going to keep checking the Facebook page. So if you have any comments, any questions that you may have, please feel free to do that. And so when you see my head down, I'm looking and checking to see who's commenting and who's there. And don't forget to share this even after we're off air. All right. So, Dr. D, let's continue our conversation.
That
So when
sounds
we left, we talked about, not just the African American community that, it's a stigma that where we just cannot in the Black community, we shouldn't go to a therapist. We should, we just deal with it. But what I'm finding, while the statistics show that it's very high in our community, it's in every other community as well. So I want to briefly talk about why is that and how can we address this? Because if we need help, we need help, and we can't show up not healthy mentally, emotionally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that the entire, I was giving a talk once and I was talking about health disparities, but one of the examples I gave was that there was this movie once that was called Single White Female.
Yes.
And the
Remember it.
title was good because it represented everything that the country's been kind of created to protect. And one of the persons that was in the audience asked, has there ever been a movie called Single Black Female? We're like, no, because we think that she's got it, she's strong, she doesn't need help, all of those things. And that's one of the reasons that the health disparities exist, because people look at someone that looks like me, and if I lose a lot of my blood volume, they're not going to rush to help me. But if someone who's lighter loses theirs, they're going to look bad before me, and they're going to get a lot better care than me. So I think there's a lot of reasons um, that people don't get health. A lot of it is how they look at it and how it's perceived. So especially in the faith community,
Mm,
um,
so true.
they yes, and which is it's probably my favorite patients to treat and the most difficult, because prayer will treat a lot of things, but you can have both. Like you can have Jesus and a therapist, or you can have your spiritual life and be doing this as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at depression as a character flaw
Yes. Yes.
instead of a chemical flaw.
Yeah. I love
And
that.
so, yeah.
Character flaw instead of a chemical flaw. I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I felt that way.
Mhm.
So, it's not just how people were. Yeah. When I had my recurrence my second year of medical school, I was mad at myself. I was like, I'm in medical school. I should be immune to this. Like, I study this. I know all of the signs and symptoms cold. This should not be affecting me. And that's why a lot of people in general don't get help, but especially people who are in medicine, who are learned, educated people,
Yeah.
and then people who are kind of have positions where they're just not allowed to have any chinks in their armor. They're the leader, they're the CEO, they're not allowed to have anything wrong with them.
Yes.
It's really really challenging sometimes for them to give themselves permission to take a break. Again, I didn't give myself permission the first time.
I'm
um,
guilty, Dr. D. I didn't. I
mhm.
I didn't. So I'm very guilty. Yeah.
Well, it's a challenge. Like I didn't know I'd be able to come back to medical school. I hadn't met anyone who'd done it. And it really wasn't until our dean of students recommended that I take a break. And when he said it, then I gave myself permission to take the break. And I have to say that in my career, that is the best decision I've ever made.
Yeah.
It allowed me to be there for my family when we had those 5 deaths. it allowed me, most important, to actually take the time to invest and get treatment. So I was, getting treatment for my depression, um, recognizing that I needed help and that treatment came in a lot of different forms. So, the psychotherapy, the talk therapy,
Right.
for me, I benefited from being on medication. I have a lot of patients who feel, I attract a lot of naturalists, which is fine, if it works. So, so it's fine if it works, but if it
That right
doesn't,
there. Yes.
yeah, we have to take the shame away,
Right.
from being on a medication if that helps you. I'm a better person. I'm a better physician, when sometimes I have help, and sometimes that support may look like a medication on top of the other things that I do.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm when you're talking, it's like that was me exactly. I there's this stigma, I was ashamed to go. I knew but I can't go. I've got to show up. I'm strong. I should be doing better. I know better. I'm an educator. I'm a pastor. I grew up in a pastor's home. My parents are educated, all of these things. And we pray and we go to Jesus and we think it's gonna be okay. But but we have to get help. We could go to Jesus and we can have therapy. And I just had to make a decision that I was such in a place, Dr. D, similar to you. I needed help. And that was just it. And I know for me, I believe, no, not I, but I know I heard God say, you go get some help, girl. You need to talk to someone. And I will never forget, I drove around until I could find that perfect person or that person that fit me. So I think that's important as well. Find that person that you feel comfortable with, that gives you a safe space to where you can talk.
Mhm.
You can get it all off. And I've been that much better. That much. I mean, listen, the best decision I ever made. Best decision I ever made. Yeah.
And I love that you said that your tenacity and driving around to make sure you found that person, because a lot of people give up
Mhm.
because they'll have that one interaction with someone who may have all the degrees in something, but for some reason the vibe is off or something's off,
Yes.
and you don't continue. That there's a lot of different treatments that are very effective. Over 80% people get better, with
Yes.
treatment. And so if one thing doesn't work, there's other things that can be tried. So like, don't give up on yourself. And again, if you don't have that connection with whoever who is treating you, it is in your best interest to find someone that you can be transparent with.
Right. And it's and the second part of that you said that's also a stigma sometimes we have is taking medication for it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you need medication, you take medication. And I really want to speak to this because many times we say, well, I don't need it. I'm just going to believe. Well, you can believe and take that medication. That's why it's there. It's created for a purpose. And listen, I'm that, naturalist. I like all the natural things. But I have to tell you, if the natural doesn't work, I just got to go. You understand what I mean? Let
Mhm.
me get this because what I've discovered over the last few years is that when I speak about living my life by design, part of that is doing all the necessary things so I could be healthy, wealthy, and I can be wise. Right. And so that really starts when you think about some foundation, it really starts about where you are mentally, emotionally. How do you feel? And that really sets the tone with everything that you're doing. So, what I hear you saying is that if you did not get the help that you need as a physician, just saying, you know what, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I need help. That's what made you a better physician. Let's say a better person first, which then led to a better physician in all of the areas that you're serving in. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so talk to us a little bit about that. How did you now become this? When I look at you, I just think that you're just phenomenal. I'm like, yo, you got to go see Dr. D because I've seen what you've done and I absolutely love it. And I think that if we can just put our hands in someone. It doesn't necessarily have to be Dr. D because you may not be in the Daytona area, but wherever you are, getting that help so you can just be that whole person, that whole person.
And I love that you mentioned like the whole person, because we really do have to take that holistic look to health, and that no one has a monopoly on health. So I don't, bash anyone that's doing more natural medicine or that's doing this or doing that.
Right,
That it really can be this integrated approach. I'm a family physician, so I treat depression and mental health, but I also treat diabetes and high blood pressure and cholesterol. And when I find someone who is not taking care of themselves, where I start is what's your self-worth?
ah,
Because you have to have self-worth,
yes,
in order for you to decide that I'm going to take my medications. I'm not going to drink the soda. I'm going to make wiser decisions. And so, really looking at that self worth, that mental health, because it definitely plays a role in everything else that we do.
yeah, yeah. I love that because, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it after the next break. No, having self-worth, because really that leads to everything else. That leads, I love myself so much, so I'm going to get the help that I need. And when I do that, then I can begin to take care of myself in all areas of my life. And I think that's where it begins when we're speaking about shining that light, in a dark place, bringing light to a dark place. It really starts with self-worth. And so when we come back, Dr. D, can we speak a little bit about how do we begin to do that? What's your recommendation? How do we begin to shine that light? Right? We'll be right back. We'll be right back, everyone, in just a few minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to Life by Design podcast, living 365 days of purpose with me, your host, Dr. Esther Graham, and my beautiful guest today again is Dr. Delicia Haynes. And so we ended our last segment speaking about self-worth and really that being the foundation to shine in that light in a dark spot, in a dark space, so you can now go on that path to being a whole person, being would the word be holistically healthy in every area. So let's
Mhm.
speak about the importance of that, Dr. D.
It's really, I mean, it's so important. When we think of like the worst decisions that we've ever made. Typically, we're like hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. That HALT acronym.
Right.
And so we have to watch out for that. But also like understanding where our self-worth as a person comes from. So, that self-worth is that intrinsic thing that you as a person versus sometimes your self-esteem may be, look, I'm a good doctor, or I'm
Mm,
a good lawyer, or I'm good at, something that I do. But my self-worth, that regardless of all of that,
right.
that just my intrinsic worth as a person, as someone who's moving and breathing, without the titles, without, all of those things. For myself, a lot of my self-worth growing up came from my grades. And so I was a 4.0 and above student, because it was tied up to that. I got my first B, and it was bad. But it was just because my self-worth was tied up in that. For other people, their self-worth is tied into other things. And it's always dangerous to have your self-worth tied into something that's external to you,
Right.
or
Right.
something that can really easily change. Um, but when I'm meeting with my patients, and I'm looking at I treat a lot of diabetics, and so I'm looking at their blood sugar, and I'm like, okay, like this is still awful. And this is a lifestyle, type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease. So why, like, what's happening? And when we really get down to it, the self-worth, the believing in themselves that they can do something, and oftentimes having mental health struggles like depression, are one of the reasons they're not being treated, and they're not taking care of themselves and making those decisions. And when it comes to depression in general, like we think of like the worst case scenario, when you like look at them and you can tell, because maybe they're kind of trying to shrink, and they're in all black, and they haven't bathed for days. But most of people walking around with what can be a mild depression, you can't tell from the outside that they're dealing with that.
Right. Right.
Um, so it is really important to check in. I have a something that I use, a survey that I use called the Beck's Depression Inventory. It's BECKS.
Mhm.
And it's online, so you actually can do a Google search and find that. There's a lot of other different surveys that are out there, but I like that because it's only 21 questions, so it's not too long, but it's kind
Right.
of long enough to give you an idea of where you stand from a mental health aspect. And I give it to my patients with the same regularity I give them a blood pressure log or a blood sugar log, because if you're not measuring it, you can't manage it.
Right. Right.
And so whether it's mental health, whether it's diabetes, whether it's hypertension, whatever it is,
Yeah.
we need to try to make sure that we're finding a way to measure it. And for myself, I have a score at which I know I need to, add medication to my regimen. So there's no shame. There's no, it is what it is. It's a nice kind of like objective thing. I do mine usually every Sunday. I call it my come to Jesus moment
Yeah.
with my mental health, because it can be such a a shift or decline that can be slow, and so you don't pick up on it until it gets really bad. And so doing something like a Beck's depression inventory helps to pick up on that decline so that you can intervene faster. You can and not get to the point that you really require really intensive intervention.
Yeah.
And that's one of my keys as far as like staying healthy now, is just kind of being aware and actually like being emotionally naked with myself and saying, okay, like this is what's going on.
Yeah, I love what you said. I was making notes, and one of the things I did say was, the awareness, you know, being very aware of what's going on with you. There's several things that you said. If I could just have you maybe just come back to it. HALT, HALT, hungry, angry,
Lonely, tired.
and tired. I love that. And when you're hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, that's HALT. You really just have to halt, right? Because that's what a sign that something is happening, something is wrong. And then having the Bex is an inventory that you can take. What I love about that is that you said you take regular inventories of yourself. So don't wait until you're so far gone to where it's going, it's going to take a lot for you to manage it, but start doing regular inventories, so that may mean for some, it may mean weekly, bi-weekly, it may mean monthly, but just regular to regular, right? To just see where you are. I love that. Because I do my checks, but when you said, I was like, no, but I don't think I do them regularly. You know what I mean? I do them, because I'm always about, how am I feeling about this? But I love and using this survey to say, how am I really feeling? I like that. I really like that. So that's kind of like the foundation that you have when you're looking at where I am right now in my mental wellness. And so those are some of the tools that you can use to say, wait a minute, I'm not doing well, and this is what I need to do to determine really where is it that you need to go. Is it medication? Is it a therapist? Is it a combination? you know I even, even the foods that you eat, all of that, which then leads to everything else that's going on in your body. So once you did that, and once you're checking, you're using that even on your patients to see where they are. Where do you go from there? When I see now, wait a minute, there's something wrong.
Yeah, so really, that's when it's getting help. And I always encourage people to come up with a plan when they're mentally well, so they're not trying to make a decision in a crisis,
Right.
and they're not trying to like do research in crisis. So one of the pages in the planner that I created is kind of like your 911 days. So you've got like, this is the person I can call at 2 o'clock in the morning. This is
Good. I
my
love
this is
that.
my therapist. That you have it there listed out, and you create that when you're not in crisis, so that if and when you are, you don't you know where to go. Like, you've already kind of like given yourself some help. um but definitely, getting help. And then those of us who are supporting someone through this, that's where we can really be of support, is decreasing the barrier to someone else getting help, whether that's researching someone that they can go and see, offering to take them there, being a listening ear, but really encouraging them that, that you are worth this. It is an investment. The other part is like, what we decide to pay for. So
Right.
you can buy shoes and you can buy purses, and nothing wrong with that. But um, you know, focusing on your mental health and investing in your mental health is going to pay dividends. So making sure that you're looking at it as an investment and not a cost.
Right, right. I love that. Looking at it as an investment and not a cost, and realizing that you're worth it. I always like to say, because at some point you're going to pay, it'll either be in the front end or the back end. So I personally prefer to pay on the front end. Let me find out what's going on right now and making that investment in me. Can I read some of the comments? Uh, they're just repeating the Beck depression assessment. Someone says, I have a mountain. Okay, hold on. I'm not sure what they're saying here. I'm not sure it's in English. So I love it. Checking in on a consistent basis, catching it before it unravels. We've put the link in, John Graham has put the link in for the assessment. They're
Thank
listening.
you.
And mental health and food addictions, all of that costs. I like what you said. And Duquesta said we were born worthy. Listen, I like what you said about having a 911 plan. And what I thought about is that on the refrigerator, especially for me, when I had young kids growing up, I had a 911. I've got all the numbers, the poison control and everything that's listed, but a 911 plan for your mental wellness.
Yeah.
That's so good. Who will you call at 2 in the morning? Who
Mhm.
can you call at 9? Who is going to be there? Who's going to reiterate to you that you are worth it, that you're
Mhm.
worth it, right? And so I think that's powerful. So in the 911 plan, the recommendation, what I hear you saying, is put it to where it can be seen, right? Have it and utilize it. Don't just have it, but utilize it, and don't and have that. I like to say, have that safe space. Who will you call at 2 p.m. that you know will answer the phone and say, okay, I got you.
Mhm.
You know, I remember a story someone told about their son, and that they were at home and they just had a wonderful evening, family get together, their son and their other children. And then at the end of the evening, their son went home and he committed suicide. And they just finished one, had no clue, had no clue. So I don't know, Dr. D, when things like that happen, it blows you. How, can we who are, can we see signs? You said you sometimes you don't. Like for them, they saw no sign. He was laughing, he was doing everything, but then he went home within an hour, a couple hours, he committed suicide. They received a phone call. I think what you're saying with having the 911 plan and doing the self checkups, doing that, what did you call it? Looking at HALT and just check regularly is so important, you know, to getting help. And then, seeing that therapist, seeing that doctor, getting whatever prescription that you need, because your life is just that much important. How do we stand, for someone? Is there any, we may not see, but is there anything at all? Or is it something that the person just themselves have to own up and say, I need this?
We can definitely create an environment where it's easier for them to get help. And so that's where we can all come together. We do have to make sure that we realize that you're not responsible for anybody else's actions.
Right.
And for people who love someone who may have died by suicide, that you're not responsible for their action.
But creating an environment, we've got 1 minute till our next break, but creating an environment. So can we talk about that a little bit after we come back? Just briefly, how do we create that environment? I think that's really important, because I may not be able to recognize the signs, or I may not see, but I can create an environment to where it's okay. So guys, we're about to go on a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Life by Design podcast. We're going to dive in. Dr. D, let's continue our conversation. What are those signs?
Yeah, and I think it's important to know. So sometimes you don't always see the signs, but there are, in terms of when we're diagnosing depression, some of the signs that we look for. So one of them is obviously kind of having that depressed mood. So crying, mood swings. A lot of times, especially in men, they don't always feel comfortable crying, but the kind of like that emotional fragility or the mood swings, really is something that can come out. What we call anhedonia, which means lack of interest in things that you usually love doing. So if it's somebody they love to paint, I love to dance. And they're like, take it or leave it, but it's something that usually like lights them up and they're not doing that anymore. Changes in their appetite. So for some people, it may be that they're overeating, that they're eating a lot, especially a lot of comfort food.
Yeah.
And we know that those sweets, they temporarily produce serotonin, which is kind of one of those feel good chemicals. So there's a reason that we crave comfort food. Nobody has ever craved celery when they're not feeling well because it doesn't create any of that. But pizza, chips, those type of things do. And then other people, wine, yeah. Um, and then other people will stop eating altogether. Because eating is part of self-care, and if when your self-worth is low, then all of your self-care across the board starts to decrease.
Right.
Sleep changes, so sleeping too little. Some people will go to sleep, wake up in the middle of the night, they can't go back to sleep. Some people, all they do is sleep. They literally can't get out of bed. That lack of energy is definitely something that's pervasive. And sometimes if it's someone who's really high energy, that's something that you can pick up on pretty easier, because all of a sudden they're kind of moving really slow and kind of like a sloth, whereas they're usually kind of like a go, 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 fire in all cylinders person. So oftentimes you're looking for that change. Difficulty with concentration, that was the one that really showed up for me in medical school, which made it completely, I wasn't going to be able to finish. If I, had stayed in there, I probably would have failed out. I would read the same page and not be able to extract any of that information, not remember, what I had just read. And I've always been somebody who's had really good reading comprehension. So that inability to focus, that inability to really concentrate on things, feeling guilty about things that you can't really control, but like the entire world, it's like that. What I said to my teacher in writing was, the world would be better off if I wasn't here.
Mm.
And and I'd be better off if I wasn't here. Like I really, and the problem with depression is you can't trust your own mind. You can't trust your own thoughts. And that's a hard place to be, because it's like, what else do you have?
Right,
Um,
right.
but recognizing that you don't have to act on the thoughts that you're having. All of us have had some thoughts that we have not acted on for the betterment of everyone around us. And when it comes to depression, and when those thoughts especially are self-harm thoughts, which is one of the things that happens in depression, especially as it progresses, is those thoughts of self-harm and those suicidal ideation, that you don't have to act on it. Um, and so those are some of the things that you can look at, that change in an individual. Someone who is always sharp, always has their hairline just so, and all of a sudden they're like looking kind of scruffy. Someone who always smells like the latest whatever, and
Yes.
you're smelling body odor instead. So those are some things that you can kind of pick up on, that there's been a shift in how they're doing.
Right. Good. This is excellent, y'all. I listen. I hope if you're taking notes, take notes. If not, we will have the replay of all of this. I love it. And so, you spoke earlier about the senses as well. Can you just speak just a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So I love to take, again, that really comprehensive approach to treating mental health, that nothing happens in a vacuum. So whether you're on medications or not, doesn't mean you can't do other things. So I use all five senses. So sight, there are certain things that you look at and they make you smile. Babies, puppies, whatever your thing is, that you make sure that you've got that.
Perfect. I'm sorry, Dr. D. You guys, so if you're on, make sure that you're typing this in chat. Type the five senses with what she's saying. Go ahead.
Yeah. So sight, if it's something that like you look at and it lights you up, then make sure that, you've got that around you. So I'm currently sitting in my new apartment and there's a lake in front of me. I love the water. So my goal is to spend more time inside my house, which doesn't always happen, um, if regardless of where you are, like I have a screenshot that has me and my dad like laying on the bed smiling at each other. My dad just makes me smile. He's always been luckily a non-judgmental space for me. So sight is really important. Sounds, the problem with depression is that your own self-talk becomes very, very negative. Like your inner mean girl or inner mean boy just kind of takes over.
Mm.
And so, while the goal is to get you to a point where you can be your own cheerleader, when you're in the real depths of depression, you're going to have to import that. Make that can come in the form of like podcasts that are positive, music that's positive. We got to watch the lyrics
Yeah.
because we like some music that has bad lyrics to it, and that's not going to be beneficial to us. But really, making sure that what's going into our ears is positive and it's uplifting. And when you do have a thought that's negative, that you do have to kind of check it. So you have that thought like, well, I'm not good at this. You're like, well, actually, I'm pretty awesome at
Yeah.
all these other things. Okay, everybody makes a mistake. So if it's hanging out there and it's not checked, it's true to yourself. So really making sure that as you're having those negative thoughts, that you're kind of you're pressing pause on them and you're checking them. So sight, sound, touch. Not everyone gets to have a front row seat in your life, and especially when you're going through a difficult time.
Yes.
There are some people who need to be loved from a distance. They call and you look at the caller ID and you don't answer because
Nothing
it's
wrong
your own
with that.
boundary. Nothing wrong with that. You can tell them, yeah, absolutely. I tell my patients like you can tell them your doctor said. But, and then there's people who are like they're bright and they're like joy. You want to make sure you love them up close. Taste, we kind of talked of, you got to be careful about the things that you're going to be drawn to, which are going to be those comfort foods. What you really need is more of an anti-inflammatory diet. Inflammation in the brain has a lot of ill effects. So we're doing things like vegetables and like high quality proteins, things that really help to decrease inflammation and making sure you're getting a lot of hydration. And then smell, which is one that we don't always focus on. There are certain smells that are associated with great times in your life. Aromatherapy in general is powerful, but there are certain smells that you have an emotional attachment to. For me, it's cherry chapstick. And when I smell it, I'm back in like the third grade. I finally got that seat over top of the tire where you get to bump and you get to like act like you got thrown everywhere, and I felt like I was on top of the world in third grade. I've got cherry chapstick everywhere. So those are just some of the senses that you can kind of wrap around everything else that you do. Physical activity as well is important, but all of those things can really help you to feel better.
Awesome, awesome. So there's many steps that you have, and if you did not get them all, I want to encourage you to make sure you listen to the replay. Dr. D, how can someone connect with you?
So the easiest is my website. So it's Dr. Delicia MD, which is DrDeliciaMD.com. So it has both my book, The Dawn, it has the planner, the Daybreakers Inspirational Planner, and then just, general information as well.
Yeah. All right. So listen, y'all, the planner is excellent. The book is excellent. Make sure that you connect. She has many things on her website to, excuse me, to offer. And so I celebrate you. Thank you so much for coming on as we prepare to close. Lots of information. I will be listening to the replay and just, taking it in for myself. And so everyone that's out there, make sure that you listen, that you share it. This conversation is for you, and maybe it's also for a friend of yours or a family member. So make sure that you share it with them. And then, of course, please join me on September 8th for the next podcast where we will have Kevin Goins, where he will be speaking about the power of your story. And this has just been, I have to tell you, Dr. I've had phenomenal guests on, because everyone that comes on, just as with you, have so much to share as we're just building our life to live in that life, I like to say, as what God has designed and created us to live in the first place. He wants us to be happy and joyous and feeling good about who we are, not just one day, but every day. So thank you so much. Check out my website, everyone. I do have a free gift on there for a preview call that I have, I believe August 29th. So check it out where you can register for it, where we're going to speak some more about how can you really begin to shift your mindset and begin to change some things that's going on in your life. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you. God bless you. Take care. Dr. Delicia, thank you so much. Do you have any parting words as we end?
I just say, fill your cup, serve from your overflow. My favorite quote, I have to tell myself again and again and again. So go out and fill your cup.
Fill your cup, serve from your overflow. God bless you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Living a Life by Design, the journey back to you, and living 365 days of purpose with host Esther Graham. Listen or watch live every second and fourth Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Discover that what is possible is already in you. God designed a phenomenal life for you. Esther helps you ignite that energy behind your personal journey for a deeper joy and peace, living 365 days of purpose. For more information on living a life by design, visit fddwomen.com.